We know that over the next 2 years, Meta is planning on dropping 2 headsets, potentially 3. Next year, 2026, the ultralight headset that they're saying will still be tethered, but will have full mixed reality, be able to see around, and maybe be some sort of a device that you can wear out in public, maybe. And then the Quest 4 that we've been eagerly awaiting that has been postponed was supposed to be 2026 and is now 2027. Some higher end version of the Quest, hopefully with eye tracking again, foveated rendering, and the best Quest we've ever seen yet. Well, we got a special invite up to Canada. We got to go to SIGGRAPH. SIGGRAPH, if you don't know what it is, it's a very tech convention. And when I say very tech, I mean it's like tech insiders only. This is not a big public event like CES every year. It's not consumer driven. This is people behind the scenes in the tech world, and we got to try 2 prototype headsets that Meta is designing towards the future of all of their headsets. If you're not aware, basically what happens, Meta Reality Labs division, the division that makes all of their AR, XR, VR devices, is constantly trying out new things, working on prototypes, and then a lot of those prototypes end up having components in the future of headsets. They showed off headsets years ago that were ahead of their time for what the Quest Pro was trying to do, the Quest 3 was trying to do, and now we got to try 2 that basically seem like they are aligning up with the Quest 4 and this ultra lightweight headset. So let's talk about the first headset we got to try there. These are codenamed the Tiramisu, and then the Boba 3 we'll talk about later in the video. So what the Tiramisu headset is it's a headset that's showing off basically a far future of the Quest lineup VR headsets. It has extremely realistic, intense graphics and 90 pixels per degree, which is like over 5 times what the Quest 3 can currently do. An extremely bright headset with high contrast, 1400 nits of brightness. This thing was trying to show off the realism that could happen in the future of headsets. And it was basically a Quest 2 that had the same trackers as the Quest 2, but it looked like you had just lengthened the thing way out. And that was because of the optics, which they actually let us get a shot of, that go inside of this thing. The whole stack of optics is really long, the screens and everything. And the wildest part about this headset was it only had a 30-degree field of view. If you're used to the Quest 3, you've got 110 degrees. What you're used to, if you already feel like you're looking through binoculars, this thing has you looking through even smaller screens. They sit you down, the first thing they have you do is grab a Quest 3 and look, and you're inside of this plane cockpit, you're looking around, and basically they're gonna show you that scene, and then you're gonna sit down and look at it through the Tiramisu. So I am in a plane on a runway. I mean, even in a Quest 3, it's amazing. You got a little lean over, but you can still see stuff at least. I put on the Quest 3, I look around, pretty typical plane cockpit, you got gauges and stuff, lights, nothing was real impressive about it. And obviously it was a nighttime scene, which meant that the contrast, the LCD screens that you have in the Quest, very grayish, dark night, you know, it didn't look very real. You were very clear you were in a video game. But then we switched over to the Tiramisu headset. They didn't have a strap on it for some reason, probably because it's so long, they were worried about the weight hanging off people's necks, so you had to hold it up to your face. And I thought to myself, oh, this thing is huge, it's bulky, it's got this tiny field of view, it's gonna be terrible. And I put it up, and I think the first word out of my mouth was, okay, wow. It's shocking how even though you were looking at a small, basically square box, it felt like you were looking into a window in the future of virtual reality. It's amazing because even though the field of view is absolutely tiny, like it feels like I'm looking through a square about this big in front of me, but so quickly you get so caught up in the detail, you forget that you're even seeing that. All of a sudden, this cockpit that had looked plain and flat and boring, every gauge cluster felt like it was emitting its own light towards your eye. It feels like the lights are actually coming from the gauges. That looks like a real HUD screen right there with actual light on it. The amount of light and detail makes everything that looked really flat look very three-dimensional. It's almost like when you look at really intense ray tracing, how it feels like the light sources in the game have now become real. The screens in it that looked flat, the radar screens and stuff, now looked like it was a real screen broadcasting light. The darkness outside looked real. Like, even though it was still essentially the same plane, just with much better lighting, everything looked so alive in it. And there was details, little things that I noticed. There was like a panel or something in the door that looked like I could reach out and grab it. It feels so much more real in 3D that I want to reach out and touch stuff. That stick that looked like just blah on the Quest looks so real. The shadows, I can see the reflections I can see on it now. Oh wow, and then you look outside of the plane, which also looked very boring. There's a mountain in the distance that I didn't see at all. Wow. It was a shocking difference that this headset had. And even though it was this tiny little window I was looking through, I was so immersed looking around at everything in it, I quickly forgot how small of a binocular effect I was dealing with, because everything was so impressive looking.
I can't believe how immersed I am with how tiny the field of view is still. That's really impressive.
Everything in it just looked so much more three-dimensional. The lighting popping in it, it made the cockpit look so real. I could read the gauges that were far away. And what it felt like for the first time ever in a VR headset for me, if I couldn't see something, like it was out in the distance, it was too blurry, it felt like it was my actual sight that was falling short rather than the headset itself. In real life, we all have different levels of eyesight. I actually had LASIK a couple years ago because I was so sick of VR and glasses and all the problems there. But if a gauge was far enough out and I was like, oh, I can't read that, it seemed like it was just normal real life where, like, you know, if a book is across the room, most of us can't read that book anymore. It didn't feel like the headset was falling short in this way.
It just looks real. It doesn't, like, obviously I can see it's computer graphics, but like, there's no like, oh, it just looks dull and flat. It looks like what I would imagine it looks exactly like to be in an actual cockpit. Like, everything lights up properly. It feels like it's actually nighttime. Wow.
It was an absolutely wild experience. Editor John, who's been with me for years, I even had him pop his eyes in real quick just to take a quick look to just see what I was seeing, and his reaction was pretty funny.
Like, that does it no justice. Wow.
Then they had you move around to the other side of the table because that was a dark night scene. They wanted to show you the contrast there, the difference. They wanted to show you what that looked like. You go to the other side and it's a nature scene. And I put up the Quest 3 and I'm looking around and I assume this is a 360 photo taken of the outdoors. You look at it in the Quest 3, it's what you've seen if you've looked at 360 photos. It looks nice. There's sunlight, there's trees, there's dirt and everything, but it still feels nothing like you're really there. You switch to the next headset.
All right. Okay, is this rendered? This isn't actually real, is it?
And all of a sudden I realized this was actually a rendered nature scene. This was not a 360 photo, but the graphical fidelity on the Quest 3, you couldn't tell that really because it just wasn't high definition enough. Inside of this tiramisu headset, the sunlight felt like real sunlight. It was coming down so bright. When you looked up, you could see your eyes actually adjusting, the light in the headset adjusting to seeing this contrast. When you looked at the ground, it changed. And even though it was the same scene, once again, through a very tiny window, it looked so realistic.
It feels like you're looking at a different scene. It's that detailed. The shadows look real. The sunlight looks real. Like, everything in it, the moss on the rock. And you like instantly forget that you've lost a third of your field of view because everything is so good. You know what it kind of looks like? It kind of reminds me of holding those little slide things that you click and see different slides, but if you were standing in full real sunshine coming through it.
It was so realistic though that was when I realized that it was a rendered scene, because if you looked really closely at textures, you could see that they weren't real. You could see that the up close to the tree was missing, you know, the tiniest little splinters of detail of real life. But anything, I think I said beyond like 5 or 8 feet, it looked completely real. The rocks out there in the distance, the banks, the trees, everything looked real unless you could actually get close enough.
It's so high resolution, I can actually see where the flaws in the rendering are, which is a compliment. It doesn't sound like it, but that is a real compliment because, like, you can tell it's not a real log because you're expecting to see every splinter sticking out and you don't. You can actually see where it's smooth. Where on the Quest, I fully thought it was just a real scene. I didn't think it was rendered. Wow. Oh, there's cones and stuff. You also notice way more details on stuff with how real this looks.
And it was almost like if you played Half-Life Alyx back in the day on one of the first early headsets and then you went back and revisited it later, all of a sudden you realize with a better headset, better graphics, that like the USB drives in the beginning of the game on that radio was just a flat texture. There was no depth inside of that. It was just a flat wall. This headset, if you were to play your normal games on this tiramisu, you wouldn't be able to see very wide, but you'd suddenly realize how many graphics fall short because this thing was just so powerful at its ability there.
The rocks, as long as they're more than like 8 feet away, that right there looks like a completely real rock. Like, I really would have believed this was a real rendered nature scene without getting close, but it's not the headset's fault. It's actually, we can't render probably powerfully enough to make this, but with a headset like this, you could believe it was real around you. This is crazy.
A wild experience on both of these, and the crowd's reaction, interestingly, was people weren't piling up in line for this one as much as they were for the boba. The boba was the big attraction because everybody heard 30 degrees field of view, why would I care? It was surprisingly impressive. Even only looking through that small one, it just felt like you're seeing the far future of how real VR could get. It was pretty cool. We'll talk more at the end about both of them after that, but after that, we went back up to the front to try and see the Boba 3. So this is a mixed reality headset ultra wide field of view. They're advertising this thing has a 180-degree field of view. For reference, humans can see 200 to 220 based kind of upon your eye placement on your face, the shape of your head. Everyone's a little different in that respect, but basically 200 to 220 is what they're saying your real life field of view is. And this thing was supposed to do 180 and 120 vertical. Now, while people were waiting in line, because there was quite a big line, what they did to save time was one guy was carrying one around, and surprisingly, this one, it didn't have obviously the full programs, but it was still functioning, it was turning on, so there is some sort of battery built into this thing to potentially have a standalone mode, and that's why it made me curious that maybe this one is an early design of what we're gonna see next year for their ultra lightweight, potentially tethered headset. And he would bring it over to you and show you all the adjustments on it, where you could adjust the lenses back and forth, how you could move them closer to your eyes, and actually the whole front was able to flip up. He was showing people in line that so that when they got in, they could quickly adjust it to their face and get into the demo. I had him show it to me, but I didn't want to mess with it because I wanted to wait for the actual experience. They sit you down on a couch, they give you the headset. It is wired up still, but when you put this thing on, it's unlike anything I've ever experienced in VR, because I have tried, wider field of view headsets that have split lenses that are adjusted for that, and they claim to have this wider field of view, like 140 even. You put this thing on and it's one single glass lens that wraps all the way around the side of your eye. And I could not see where, I still don't know how they managed to do this. Was it two screens that software somehow meshed perfectly? Was it one flexible screen that bent around your eye? I don't know, it's hard because the headset itself doesn't even look like it goes that far on. But it was seamless when you would look in this thing, and it felt almost like your full human vision. The 120 degrees vertical completely covered it. I looked up, I looked down, and it felt like the only spots I couldn't see was where I can normally see my cheek and my eyebrow. It was completely enveloping my vertical. The horizontal, it was so far back, you could kind of see there was like a little bit of a black line way back here, but the thing is, with your normal vision, when you try and look to the side, you can only focus so far, and then everything beyond that's kind of just peripheral, and you can't really see or look that far anymore. That's the only bit you lost, and because of that, you didn't even realize you lost it. Like, for most people who went in and tried this headset, they would think it was their full vision. It was almost impossible to tell anything was missing unless you were really looking for it. And then when you looked the other way, the only thing you were missing really was where, for me, my nose normally is. And so if they had just made it look like a nose somehow, or like color your nose, you would never know where the screen stopped on the inside, because our brains were so good at realizing, our nose is here and just ignoring that. Because like if I turn my head, I can no longer see you with this eye over here. But right now, it looks like I can, because it just looks like I can see through my nose. Your brain is basically accommodating software, adjusting your real life vision.
The only thing I notice, which you notice with your real nose, you just don't think about it because it's always there, is I notice where the screen ends in the center, where my nose would normally be. But if they could make that shape like a nose, I would just think that was my nose blocking my view. Wow.
I kept repeating the same word over and over because it was just so amazing. I kept saying it's enough. It's enough, as in you didn't need more. It all of a sudden felt like looking through this thing was real life. It was all the field of view it needed to be to convince you it was real. And the only thing missing, obviously, it was 30 ppd, which is still a much higher ppd than like a Quest or something, but it didn't have that same 90 ppd and the 1400 nits of brightness the other headset had. So using that headset first did show more of a contrast between the two. But if you only try this when you were used to a Quest 3, it would feel mind-blowing. If you only tried this, even if you were used to some of the highest end PC headsets, it would still feel mind-blowing. And it was so mind-blowing, in fact, that I was, whenever I'm at these events, I try to really thank the staff that are running them, because I know that a lot of times they hire these staff on the spots, or they're volunteering their time, they're coming out from Meta, and I try and make sure that they know that I appreciate that they let me in, they let me try, that's really cool. And as I sat down, all of a sudden a staff member walked out from the side that I hadn't met yet that day, and I tried to say, hey, thank you for being here. And I realized it was the dude in the demo.
This is a blast from the past. Oh my gosh, that was not a real person.
That was walking up, but because my field of view was so far and it felt like he truly walked out, I thought for a split second this had to be a real human being walking in front of me. And I went to say, hey man, thank you. And he started talking through the demo, which was a wild moment for me to be that convinced in mixed reality that a real person had walked in. you just don't experience that. Then basically this dude talks you through a tutorial, it shows you videos, it tells you about mixed reality, and then at the end it has you play First Encounters, the same game that you originally played on your Quest 3 probably when you first got it, to demo mixed reality. None of the demo stuff did I care about nearly as much, just putting this thing on, seeing it, and what was really wild was I truly thought they were not telling me the truth, because I could see completely to the side of me when I was sitting down. And then when I looked at the headset afterwards, I was like, where are the side cameras?
How is that camera seeing that far over?
And they're like, no, there's only 2 extreme wide field of view lenses on the front, meaning that the future of our headsets could have 2 cameras, and it had more coverage than the Quest 3 has with its multiple cameras, the Quest 3S with its side, the Quest 2 with all of its cameras. These 2 cameras somehow fully replicated vision where I could sit on the couch with Quinn next to me talking to him, and I could still see him sitting right next to me even though I was looking forward, and hear him talking. It just felt natural.
I can literally still see your face with this angle that I'm at.
You mean like when I talk to you, like you see my face even if I'm staring ahead? Or do I have to look at you, and can you see me look at you?
I can still see you right now.
Yeah?
Corner of my eye.
That's pretty impressive, actually.
Real, I even talked to some of the staff with the headset on, and the field of view was so wide, I didn't feel like I needed to pull up. It just felt like I was like, okay, I can talk to them. They're looking at me in this weird headset, but I was just looking at them.
I can see this much without turning my head.
This thing felt like a complete headset, and it felt like it's close to some sort of consumer end product. Unlike the Tiramisu, which felt like a prototype, it felt like research, this thing feels like they're almost there with whatever it is to launch it as a consumer product. Would it be really expensive? I mean, it probably wouldn't have as much power as what I was trying did, but the form factor, the comfort, the way the lenses were designed, it felt like this really could be a glimpse at what's coming next year. And then the last bit, they take you over and they have you try the headset again. This one doesn't have cameras on the front, it's not mixed reality, they're just putting you in virtual reality on this one. It had different scenes that you could select with this dial there, you could recenter it, look around, and that was cool. The virtual reality inside of it looked great, obviously with that kind of field of view, a 30 ppd, you're not seeing real life, so it doesn't feel like it's falling as short.
I guess if I pull this out, I do see a tiny bit of light bleed, which I didn't expect. Like I can get my eye far enough to see, but it's to where like when you turn your eye to the side and you can't really see something still, like it's out of your view, but it's just there in your peripheral. That's all you're losing is that tiny bit. But everything about where your eyes can naturally go and focus, like I can't get my eye over far enough to focus, and that's why I say it's enough. Like I can only focus even on the speaker. That's as far as my eye will focus, and this eye is looking completely into the side of my nose.
And there was actually this scene from like The Late Show or The Tonight Show or something with Adam Sandler on stage talking, like I could look out at the crowd and I could just spot like all these different celebrities in the audience, and it was just, I keep saying that word, but it was enough that it was just convincing.
Hey, I just watched you in Happy Gilmore 2. Jack Nicholson was there, and Will Ferrell, and Blake Lively, and Ryan Reynolds. I'm like more interested in the audience than the stage. Man, this is cool because this is real and I can see everything.
It wasn't like every other headset we've ever tried where you put it on someone and they're like, oh, it's cool, but it's, you know, it's lacking this, or these, I see these edges, or what are these black bars at the side, people always ask. This is the headset that you could put anyone in, any random person, and they would be mind blown. It felt enough like real life. It was comfortable enough. The screens were wide, the way they wrapped around your eyes. You just didn't have the compromises anymore that you have with all of the modern VR tech.
What I want to know is how is there like no distortion? Like if I focus on a tree and I turn my head, the tree doesn't really change. Like there's a micro bit of change somewhere right in there. This is a revelation. Any headset that's ultra wide field of view has those split lenses. You can see where the lenses are split. Whatever they've done to correct it is really hard to tell.
So overall, both headsets absolutely amazing. An interesting glimpse into what's possibly coming, what technology this will end up in the Quest 4 versus the ultralight headset next year. We don't know for sure, but it feels like they're trying to figure out what's that last bit that makes VR or MR that much more realistic, that makes it that much more convincing. And surprisingly, even with that tiny field of view, that 90 ppd and that brightness of the Tiramisu, I feel like that was more amazing in the moment, even though I had to like really turn my head to see anything because this is a tiny little field of view. And I think that most people wouldn't have expected that, but the Boba 3 feels like it is what's probably coming. ultra wide field of view, much lighter headset, fully capable of recreating everything you normally see in your field of view, and then adding mixed reality objects to it.
I made the joke, I was like, if you could take that and then put that dense of, it's real life then. Like that's the last 2 bits that you need.
And it makes me really excited for what's coming next. I know that Connect just happened, and for now it seems like this year is more about smart glasses, and we'll see how all of this comes together in the future. But it seems like mixed reality, Quest 4 VR, they're still developing, they're still working on it. They're finding some amazing results in the prototypes they're working on. And it almost makes me glad they pushed the Quest 4 out another year, because I think if we got a Quest 4 next year, it'd be a little bit better than the Quest 3, but it would feel like a small step, kind of like a lot of people even felt like from the Quest 2 to the Quest 3 at first. Like, yes, we had better pancake lenses and we had color mixed reality, but ultimately it didn't feel like a generational leap. If we wait 2 years on a Quest 4, it feels like the generational leap that we could have with any of this technology that we got to test would feel like a giant step and a must-get headset. But it also makes me really excited for this ultra lightweight headset that they're talking about in 2026, because before this I was like, it might have a cable, like what? If it's any version of the Boba 3 that we tried, I hope that every one of you out there can get your eyes in this thing and test it out and see.
It's enough, finally. It's finally enough field of view that you're like, this feels like real life now.
Because a lot of us don't want to go back to being cabled and dealing with all that, but doing this, it just reinvigorated like what's possible and showed us that it is possible now. Obviously getting into a consumer price is harder, but we could have very convincing VR right now, or MR, maybe if we're willing to go back to being cabled somewhat. I don't love that idea, but I told them, like, even if this thing was cabled, if this could be my full-time headset and I could take this thing home and use it right now, it would become my full-time headset. I wouldn't put my Quest back on because it was just it was enough. As I've said again and again, it was enough. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments. If you have other questions, I'll try and make sure I respond down there to as many as you can about these headsets that we got to try. They'd said that this was really the only place they're planning to demo them, so it's probably not something anyone else is gonna get to see anywhere anytime soon, but whatever the final products are that come out in the next couple years, we'll see probably a lot of what was in these that makes it to market. But let me know your questions. I'll do my best to answer them down there, but once again, I just wanna say thank you so much for being here with me day after day, year after year now with the channel. I really appreciate it, and I'll see all of you in another reality.